What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another video. This is going to be the first German car on my YouTube channel. This is my roommates, my third roommates, my final roommates. 2007 Volkswagen Jetta 2.5. Jetta Wolfsburg edition, interestingly enough. And this is going to be another walk around and tour video, and then I'll take it for a test drive. Let's go ahead and get started. I personally have always liked the look of these Jettas. In my opinion, after this era, Volkswagen started getting really pretentious. It does have a sunroof, and it's just as dirty as all the other cars that I've featured. The doors, I don't know if they're sticky or the hinges need to be lubed, but they're hard to open. They do feel really solid though. And you got your usual door panel treatment. Got some, it's plastic, but it does feel decent. Got your lock, unlock door handle. Got your power mirrors, power windows, window lockout. There is some nice leather over here. And trunk fuel cap and lock and some CDs. And it does have leather interior and a power front seat. This car has 134,599 miles on it. Got your light control, which is really easy. It only has two settings, on and off. I believe if you had fog lights, I believe you'd pull out fog lights, but I'm not sure. And you got your dimmer to the right of that. Dashboard is just a normal dashboard. It is actually surprisingly hard, not as soft as I was expecting. It's got a black and tan interior. Three-spoke steering wheel. Down the center stack, you got your normal air vents, the hazard lights, which is a nice triangle. And then you got the radio, which is, just a radio with just auxiliary, because it's 2007, at least it has that. And then you got heated seats, which is nice, even though we're moving into summer, but it's nice to have. Rear defrost, I'm assuming this is recirc, and air conditioning. And your climbing controls are really simple. Temperature, fan, and your zones. And above that, in the overhead center console, you got dome. And then these very odd Volkswagen sunroof controls that make no sense to me. I don't understand. I mean, it works, but I don't understand why it's a rotary dial and not just like a button or a switch. Sunglasses. And the visors are just visors. The mirrors. They are lit. Nothing abnormal there. So your glove box. Has some masks in it and some bulbs. It's a pretty normal glove box. And the passenger side door is pretty much the same as the driver's side, except it doesn't have as much controls, and there's some junk in the door pocket. Going down the center console, you have a little cubby in here with some crap in it. And then you have the shifter for the automatic transmission. I'm not sure how many gears it has. It's 6-speed. And you can put in sport as well. And then you have your parking brake. And then you have this adjustable leather center console armrest that does open. It's got some straw trash in it, but it does feel nice to put your arm on. And these seats are reasonably comfortable. They're supportive. They fit my shape quite well. And you've got this nice gauge cluster with the gigantic tack. I like the gigantic tack and the gigantic speedometer. Generally I like this gauge cluster. I'm not really sure what these lights mean. I'm assuming this green one here is cruise control, and then airbag, seatbelt, and park and brake. And down here, you've got I'm assuming traction control off, and some blanks. And that's really it. It's a pretty simple car. You do have airbags on all the pillars, because this was the era in which airbags and all the pillars were starting to become very common. You want to check out the back seat and open the trunk. And the back seat is normal. It's the same leather back here, and there's a skateboard back here. The seats do feel quite a bit softer here. They're not as used. Middle seatbelt, hiding the center armrest with wildly over-engineered cup holders. There we go. And you do have a trunk pass-through here. And illumination as well, which you have rear dome lights as well, which is interesting. I didn't know that. And climate vents back here as well. Really, it's just a back seat. Go and move the skateboard so I can sit down. It's reasonably comfortable. There's a good view of the dash. The dash in this car it just looks like a dash. It's not as pretty as the dash in the Mazda. And I have a reasonable amount of room. This is where David sits when he drives it. And I have a couple inches of knee room, and headroom is pretty good, and I'm 6'2". But the seats aren't incredibly supportive, but they're not terrible. Dig into the trunk now. In the trunk, which probably hasn't been opened in a while, you have a trunk. It's pretty large, with the tow hooks and a battery jumper and a helmet. And I'm assuming there's a spare tire down here. Indeed there is. That is a 50-mile-an-hour max speed limit on it. It's pretty useful space though. And you can fold the back seats with this. I'm assuming, what the hell is this? Well, never mind. I thought this was how you fold the back seat. Turns out it's just a cargo hook. Which means I have no idea how to fold the back seats in this thing. And your emergency release right here. It's a nice solid trunk closing action. This one has, in my opinion, one of the best wheels you could get on this car, with the Torex head. These I'm not really sure what these are. Are these lug covers? Are these the lug nuts themselves? If you know, please let me know what those are. But I'm a fan of cars that look like nothing. And these things look like nothing. So I'm a fan of it. And I like these. After this, Volkswagen started getting a lot more aggressive, a lot more preppy. And I like the simple designs like this. So let's go and check out the engine. Alright, this car has the 2.5 liter 5-cylinder. Makes 150 horsepower and 170 foot-pounds of torque, which isn't very much. I would have expected it to make more. But as I've stated in the previous video, this is one of the only German engines that I actually enjoy. I would buy a Volkswagen with this motor. I have had good experiences with it. Alright, let's go drive this thing. All right, we're driving the Volkswagen Jetta, and unlike the Chevrolet S10 and the Mazda, this is my first time actually driving this car. I've never driven this car before, so this is going to be first driving impressions. And impression number one, as I get up to speed here, the engine feels like the engine feels more powerful than 150 horsepower. It could be gearing. It could be that it makes it 170 foot-pounds of torque at a low usable RPM. But it feels peppier than 150 horsepower. But all will be said when I floor it later. One thing that I've always noticed about Volkswagens, because my good friend has a 2012 Volkswagen Golf GTI, and that car feels really solid and really well made. And that is a theme that, at least for me, has carried over into every Volkswagen that I've ever been in. And that implies to build quality, not necessarily engineering. You know, they all feel solid and well made, but they don't always work. And even this one, in its battered high miles state, it still feels reasonably solid. There are some squeaks and rattles, but not terrible. It's definitely better than my Honda. And the sound levels in here are reasonable. Again, not terrible. I'd probably rate it the same as my Honda. And yes, I'm going to continuously compare this car to my Honda like I did with the Mazda, which I guess this is a closer comparison because this car is an 07. It's only 7 years newer versus the Mazda, which is 14 years newer. The throttle response is decent. It's more or less what I was expecting. The transmission, again, is decent. It's more or less what I was expecting. It's a torque converter automatic, and they all kind of feel about the same. You know, it's relatively intuitive. It's easy to drive smooth if you've never driven it before. Honestly, it feels the same as pretty much everything else I've ever driven. Every other automatic I've ever driven. Hopefully Honda Good, we are not following Honda Passport. Let's see how it does up this hill here. Yeah, the engine's got good power. It's pretty strong. It's pretty strong in the 2,000 to 3,000 RPM range, which is where you spend most of your time daily driving. And it works. I'm not sure where it makes its, at what RPM it makes its horsepower and torque figures, but I'm assuming, I know it makes 150 horsepower at 5,000 RPM. And that 170 foot-pounds of torque, I'm assuming, is low. Maybe like 3,800 or 4,250 or something like that. It feels reasonably torquey. And the gearing could also just be geared well for the task at hand. This car's got an airbag light on, and I'm not sure why, and the DRL light, which I'm assuming is normal. I like these gauges. I like how the temperature gauge has actual numbers. It's 120 is all the way cold, 190 is in the middle, and 260 is the high end. And the speedometer and the tachometer are gigantic, which I appreciate. They're downshifted. When we take off from this light here, I will shift it down into sport mode. And we are not going to make the light. I honestly don't know what I was expecting with this car. I guess I was expecting something different because I've never driven this thing before. But in reality, it's a Volkswagen Jetta. So I guess I got what I was expecting. Does this thing have cruise control? Oh yeah, it does. It's got it on the stock here. The turn signal stock feels decent. Has a nice affirmative action to it, as do the wipers. All the switchgear in here feels reasonable. There is a lot of cheaper plastic in here that I wasn't expecting. It's not, you know, it's holding up reasonably well. You know, it's not falling apart or anything, but it's not as soft to the touch as I was expecting. Even my Accord has nice soft material on the door upper here and a softer armrest and things of that nature. And it doesn't compare at all to the Mazda. The materials in that thing are top notch. One thing that I did just notice that I like, the ambient interior lighting is blue, which is cool. Don't see a lot of blue ambient interior lighting. I like that. All right, we've got the green, but we're stuck behind a Nissan Titan. So unless this guy turns, we're not gonna be able to do much. Really, there isn't that much to say about this thing. It's kind of just a car. I have had, you can get these with a 5-speed, and I have actually thought about buying one, you know, because they're reasonably cheap. And as I said, this is after this, Volkswagen started looking a lot more pretentious. Although I do like the recent Jettas, like the mid 20-teens Jettas. I'm a fan of those, and I would buy one of those. And they use this motor, this 2.5-liter 5-cylinder, I believe, all the way until then. So one of those I would consider buying, because those are real cheap. Nissan Titan. Unfortunately, there's traffic, so I can't haul around these corners. But at the speed I'm going, I can give you a reasonable approximation of what the steering and handling is like. And on these lazy corners, there's no body roll, although we're only going 44 miles an hour. And the steering is reasonably precise. It's weighted decently well. And there's a very agreeable amount of on-center vagueness. Really, the steering and handling is fine, just like everything else in here. And once we make a right turn at this light, I will floor it and see what kind of balls it has. I'll be honest, my expectations I do not have high expectations. The shifter down into sport, and off we go. Sport does hold the gears longer and full throttle. Sounds good. Not quick though. Yeah, it's not fast. Quicker than my Accord for sure, but it is not fast. It does sound good though. That being said, it's also a 5-cylinder and they all sound good. Honestly, the acceleration is fine. Just like everything else about this car. This car is fine. Never have I driven a car where I've been more like, wow, this is a car. I guess it does exactly what it's supposed to do, and it does it reasonably well enough. But nothing beyond that. What the hell is the issue here? But with that being said, that's about all I've got for this video. So if you guys like what you saw here, please subscribe. My goal is to have 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Who the hell knows if that's going to happen, but it would be really cool if it did. And I will have more videos to come with cars that aren't my roommates. Until then, guys, take care.